But in China, in Japan, in Korea, maybe sometimes also in Germany, you want to translate those into the language of your investment fund client.
That is kind of prime property for potential MT post-editing. Again, only post-editing because the companies can get huge fines if they get stuff wrong.
And welcome to SlatorPod. Hi, Esther.
Hi, Florian.
So welcome to the half-century, the golden episode of SlatorPod.
Golden episode,
number
yeah.
50.
So that's nearly a year's worth of SlatorPod.
Yeah. We probably skipped a couple episodes over Christmas, so it's probably been 1 year. I don't know.
I remember one of the first episodes we talked about Kantan MT being acquired by Keywords.
And that was exactly a year ago?
Must have been, I think, late December maybe. Can't remember, but yeah.
Half century, the golden episode. And to celebrate this episode, we decided not to have a guest. We have no guest today, and that is because we're completely coasting off the success that was last week's podcast with Chris Fettner, which so far has been our most downloaded podcast, and it's getting up there in terms of the views as well. So again, thanks Chris for doing this. It was great. Of course, this is a big week for us. That's one of the reasons why we decided to, basically take a bit of the pressure off, and because we have SlatorCon Remote coming up tomorrow, basically, or today, basically by the time, again, you're listening to this, it actually happened yesterday, so it's in a couple of hours. So we'll be spending a lot of time in front of our mics and our screens today. I'm really looking forward to this. You're doing with the panel, right? The MedTech panel?
Yeah, I'm moderating the MedTech panel.
Yeah.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah, I do a presentation also. I talked to Jack, Bob, and Balash from SmartLing, XTM, and MemoQ respectively. We have I have a few questions for Alex from Farfetch. So, well, again, by the time this airs, or you can access this, it'll be behind us, and it'll be probably early next week. We'll upload it to our video on demand, so you can go there and listen to it, the recording. Cool. So in terms of the housekeeping, well, our media kit is ready. I might have mentioned it before, but I might have not, so I don't remember. So let me just plug this here because we do not have advertisers, but we still want to tell you a bit more about what's going on. So we have a media kit ready for anybody, head over to our ad page and download it. It's got everything that you want to know about how to advertise and collaborate with Slator in 2021. We got 125,000 monthly page views. We now have 13,000 weekly subscribers to the newsletter. That's 13K subscribers. It's up 16% year over year. We keep adding like 50 new subscribers every week. And obviously very senior audience there, senior subscriber base, lots of buyers as well. I think there's 3,000, 4,000 buyers. So, try to get some exposure there. And we also have the RFP service. We've published 1,600 RFPs since 2016. It's a lot of translation RFPs.
It's like 400 a year or something ish.
That's so many.
Like a lot.
Just to
probably had some repeat ones by now. As in, how a lot of them are on like a 4-year cycle. We probably had the second version of whatever contract from 2016.
Yeah, definitely. And to preempt some questions, yes, most of them are government, most of them are public, like NGOs, publicly available stuff, but you don't want to really aggregate this yourself. We do this for you. So all of that information you'll find in our media kit. And if you have any questions, get in touch with Andrew. We still have some, but not too much ad inventory available for 2021. So it's going fast, TikTok. All right, let's go into today's agenda. So first, let me just briefly talk about a story I actually wrote yesterday about Germany's judicial translators and interpreters. That was tricky to go through all of that German bureaucracy language, but I kind of like it. It's the long words, and then you try to make it into a coherent English article. So well, they got a new kind of an amendment to a law, like an update. So every 6 to 10 years, the federal level, on the federal level, Germany updates compensation for court-related services, like including like lawyer fees, and including like translator interpreter fees. And so they did that. And this may sound like a bit of a niche issue, but actually, according to UEPO, which is kind of Germany's version of SLATor in a sense, there's about 25,000 linguists, let's just call them linguists, translators and interpreters, registered in Germany's national database of court translators and interpreters. And that's probably roughly half of all of Germany's translators and interpreters. So this federal pricing level applies to a lot of people when they work for the courts and the judicial system. So what are the rates? Well, they're for the hourly rate was increased from, and this applies, I think, to both translators and interpreters. It was increased from a range of 70 to 75 euros for consecutive and simultaneous. So now it's unified. It's a unified 85 euros per hour. I think it's mostly for court interpreting. Sorry. But initially, this was actually an initial draft of the act of the law was 95, so it kind of wiggled down by 10 euros.
Settled in the middle a little bit.
Yeah, compromise. For translation, interestingly, they're still measuring this by the line. I remember in my super early days, like CLS also invoiced by the line for some Swiss legacy customers, but I don't know. I mean, it's 2020. So by the line, a line is what exactly?
Well, I thought it was based on, I thought we were going to break it down into words per line, but I suppose it's characters, 55 characters, including the spaces, equals
That's
one
a very
line.
short line.
Is it?
It's a very short line.
I haven't counted.
Well, let's just take the sentence test we have in our show notes here. So that would be 92 characters. So, it's normal, it's 11 font size, it's Arial. So it's basically half of that. So it's a very short line. And so the line price, again, 55 characters, including spaces, was increased from a range of 155 euro to 205 euros to 180 euro to 210. And there's some, wider range, because if it's basically an editable format, it's a quote-unquote normal text. It doesn't have any other kind of factors around it. It's the lower end. It's 180 now, and if it's maybe a scanned PDF or it arrives at the middle of the night, it's maybe, and you have to turn it around super fast, it's €2 10 cents per line. I tried to do an equivalent word price. I think I came up with something between 20 euro cents and 25 euro cents per word, which is very, very high in kind of a corporate context, I guess. But again, it's an inexact science because, how many words are there on a line?
Well, yeah, I think that's the thing, isn't it? Because obviously if you're being paid for a line and there are 89 or 90 or so characters, but you're only being paid as though it was 55, then isn't that worse for you?
It's better. You get more through. You have fewer words to translate. Anyway, let's stop here. go figure it out.
Before we go into the weeds.
I think it's somewhat generous. The criticism was swift. So the BDU, the German Association for Translators and Interpreters, basically said the lawmakers missed an opportunity not only to increase rates and kind of show appreciation to the legal translation, judicial translation and interpreting community, which they often profess, but when it comes to actually paying, some of that respect is lacking. Not only that, they also criticized that they didn't abolish the ability of the German states to still put out local or regional framework contracts that are apparently they have the ability to undercut the national rates.
Oh, okay.
Complicated.
Wow.
So it's not like this is binding, apparently, but I might get this wrong. So please let me know if I got this wrong. But apparently you can still have local framework or regional framework contracts that undercut this, and that's not great. On LinkedIn, somebody from the UK still commented that, well, the Germans should be happy. Those rates are quite good. So let's leave it at that. Hopefully I still get invited to the next BDU conference. That was one of my best experiences ever last year when I was able to speak in the former German Bundestag. And basically
weren't there like 1,000 people or something all in this big conference style?
But it was very nicely. You didn't really feel that it was 1,000 people. Like, it was just it's such an impressive, obviously, venue, right? It was the former venue of the Bundestag before they moved to Berlin. It was in Bonn. Yeah. But the sound system was amazing and everything. So
did they have like the raised cyclical seating, or like amphitheater? You know
yeah. It's like so
that's why it doesn't look like a sea of people necessarily. You're kind of nicely cocooned.
Yeah, exactly. And then there were some people on kind of a balcony level up there. So, well, anyway, please remember to invite me again. Don't need to be the keynote speaker. I can just be there. Moving to equity research, completely different topic. Why are we talking about equity research? A, it's something I'm familiar with, although my knowledge is dating quickly. And B, because Jefferies, the US investment bank, announced that they signed an alliance with Nikko Securities in Japan to... it's basically a translation alliance. So they're sharing research with Nikko Securities, and they're going to start doing sharing research on high-profile stocks that will be translated initially, and then coverage gradually expanding to about 100 stocks. So that's good volume. This piece of news just triggered me to think about my good old days of doing a bunch of equity research translation, selling it, and liaising with the clients. So I think it's a nice topic to just briefly cover. So that's good volume. If you cover 100 stocks, that's a lot of updates and a lot of good volume. So we don't know if Jefferies does this via a vendor, or maybe they have some partner in Japan that does it, or maybe they even do some of that translation in-house. No particular
Nikko,
insight.
You mean in Japan?
No, Jefferies or Nikko. I don't know.
Okay.
They're partnering, so I don't know who takes care of the translation. But
right. Okay.
Let's just take this as a quick opportunity to give you an overview of equity research translation. So first, what is equity research? It's basically a lot of the investment funds that need to invest, right? They go to big investment banks and they want to trade through those investment banks. And then there is what you call sell side, the sell side part of those brokerages. They provide coverage of all of the stocks that you can potentially invest, right? And because you want to be informed when you're investing lots of course, big sums, you need some research on that. So that's what the brokerages do. They write about all of these different companies and write big reports. For example, when RWS publishes a new set of results, there's usually a big research report that comes out by the brokerages that cover that stock. And that's a lot of text, and it's a lot of analysis, and it's actually quite nice to translate these texts. It's fairly technical, but if you're into this kind of financial analysis, it's got some prose-like characteristics. It's almost like journalistic, and sometimes those analysts would not just look at spreadsheets, but they'd actually go maybe sometimes and visit the companies and really get an insight into how these companies work. So it's kind of journalistic content almost sometimes. So if you're into that kind of stuff,
does it talk about what the
nice.
Companies do?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
So
it's not just like here's the balance sheet, et cetera, et cetera. No. It's more like an analysis of the customers and how they're operating and what have you.
Yeah, and the drivers, right? And you presented at that Capital Markets Day at some point, and I also sometimes have calls with people that cover the translation space. The translation companies that are listed, right? So they want to know quite detailed analysis around that. So the output of that are reports. And those reports need to get translated if you want to get into, for example, the Japanese market, because Japanese fund managers, they don't really speak English that well, right? There's other markets where you can just send the English language reports, but in China, in Japan, in Korea, maybe sometimes also in Germany, you want to translate those into the language of your investment fund clients. So Now, there was a big change in about 2 years ago. I'm not going to go too much into detail, but that basically the production of that research used to be bundled into the price of doing a trade. And so they overproduced a lot of that research. There was tons and tons of volume. And then the European Union put in a regulation, lo and behold, they had to price the research separately. And then, basically the asset managers had to buy all those reports as a standalone product, which, it was interesting. It did have an impact on volumes, translation volumes as well, but they have since stabilized. So, yeah, it was a good space to be in. It was quite competitive as well, but it was an interesting space to cover, and still is. And it's also hard to find good translators or experts for this, because if you, for example, you speak Japanese, English, and you're a finance expert, well, we spoke about this many times.
Work at a bank or something.
Yeah, you maybe sometimes work at a bank.
Make a ton of money as an investment banker.
So I think it's a very prime area for post-editing machine translation, but I do stress the post-editing part, not just the machine translation part. Yes, you can do a fair amount of that work with machine translation probably, because it's fairly consistent in its characteristics as a text type. But if you really make a major, if MT makes a major mistake, that's a problem. So it's people trading on that information. So you still want to have experts that are looking at this. Let's go to the other side, because that's where you were at home, right? The investment funds. And another niche that still generates a bunch of translations. So let's talk a bit about investment funds before we move on.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting hearing you talk, because I haven't seen so much of the equity side, but more on the investor side, or investor disclosures, really. So we used to translate thousands sometimes of these really short documents that are basically investor information documents. And big investment companies are required to put these out, make them available to all of the potential investors around the world. So if you have a fund and you intend to sell it to somebody in, I don't know, Germany or anywhere across in Europe, you need to have the fund available, also the fund information available in the language of your investor as well. So, but these companies have sometimes thousands of different funds, and they have to bring out the same disclosure kind of documentation for each of them. So oftentimes the funds are not that dissimilar one from the other. They might be sort of sub funds of the same fund. They might be trading in a different currency or something, or leveraged in a different currency. So the documents themselves are very, very similar. Very short as well, very structured. So they're kind of 2 pages normally, 2 to 3 pages now that some of the new regulations come in. But yeah, like you were saying, it's kind of prime property for potential MT post-editing. Again, only post-editing, because the companies can get huge fines if they get stuff wrong on those investor information documents. But it's a big market. Yeah.
Let me just pause you there for a second. So one of the key differences, I guess, between equity research and these investor documentation material is that equity research is primarily targeted at institutional investors, right? Whereas those funds need to be, they need to be written primarily for a retail audience. At least they should understand them. So it can't be full of crazy investment lingo, right?
Yeah, exactly. So there's plain language requirements, so that anybody, you or I, could sit there and read them, or maybe not you or I, because we've worked in the space, but anybody could sit there and hopefully be able to understand them. I remember finding it very upsetting at one point when I realized that nobody ever read these things.
Yeah, same in equity research.
I'm spending 10 hours a day managing these projects, and then somebody said to me at one point, yeah, but no one ever reads those, the final documents. I'm like, what? So now I make a point of reading them, actually. So because I have an investing app called Plum. And you basically, so it's like whatever, you have it on your phone and you can go in and move money and things like that. But I went in to see if it had these key investor information documents or key investor documents, and it does. So you can within the app, you click on the documents, you can go and you can access I think there were 11 or 12 different key investor information documents just for that one app, basically, that allows you to invest.
But that means that you're only able to invest in 11, 12 funds, and they just have the related...
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the really simple ones where like they do all the investing for you, so you don't actually choose where your money is going necessarily. You kind of do to a certain extent, but they kind of give you the high level, like, oh, it's going into XYZ, but I think it's managed by somebody else on the back end.
Good. So hey, you made some other head of PM happy somewhere at the translation company. You actually read it. Or was it? Were you able to select the language version as well, or was it only English?
No, I don't. No? I think it was only English, and I think they were actually the funds themselves. I think were managed by Vanguard. So whoever's been doing the Vanguard, although Vanguard probably writes in English, so I'm not a beneficiary of the translated versions.
But then those kids, again, key investor document. What does the S stand for? I don't remember.
Oh, just the plural.
Yeah, okay. So those kids, they go into all of the 20 European... It
depends where you want to sell your funds.
It depends where you want to sell
register your funds. Yeah.
I think it's a good idea. I mean, if you want to have people's money, you probably should tell them where it's invested. So even if no one reads it, then it kind of, it's on you if you don't read it. So
yeah. There we go.
Good. Plum. You plucked Plum. Hey, Plum.
Well, I use it. It's not necessarily an endorsement, but there we go.
Okay, sure. Moving on. We typically don't cover press releases too much by vendors, but I think we can give a broader picture. So SDL partnered with Rovva with 2 V's, and on their new SLATE product. What's Rovva? Have you?
So I did a bit of digging. Rovva, and also from the press release, they are a co-working and virtual office provider, so like a subscription-based WeWork type thing. I hesitate to say, but they offer businesses sort of access to private offices and meeting rooms, and they have offices all around the world.
What's a virtual office though? Like virtual, what does that mean?
Well, I think when I was looking at it, it was sort of saying that they'll give you like a PO box, or they'll give you an address in New York, for example.
Okay. Oh, and then you get to stay at one of those. Maybe if you you kind of have the address.
Yeah.
Okay, and SLATE is SDL's kind of off the shelf raw MT plan, right? It's kind of productized
it can be
MT.
raw. It can be raw MT, but they also offer subscriptions for post editing with it as well. So I think there's 3 levels of service, but each of them rely on have MT at the core.
Yeah, and we said we're not taking it personal that they call it SLATE, so it's okay. That's fine with us. Now the bigger, to me, more important point here is that sometimes LSPs underestimate maybe what they could do with channel partnership. This to me sounds like a channel partnership. So you go to Rovva. Rovva doesn't buy SLATE, but Rovva offers it to their customers as an add-on when they set up these virtual offices and workspaces, etc. So it's not easy to find a partner where it actually works. But we had a partnership with a e-discovery firm once where we'd be the preferred translation provider for an e-discovery firm, and that gave us a fair amount of leads into law firms, right? So as an LSP, you can look out for potential win-win situations where basically you find a channel that will benefit from adding your services to their offering, and then they funnel partners to you. So that's kind of for you to generate leads. So this is just one small example where SDL signed this with Rovva, but for LSPs generally, I think this could be, or this is a potentially good route to new leads.
One thing that occurred to me as well is that, I mean, this is totally fabricated in my mind potentially, but maybe SDL uses Rovva offices, so maybe it's like really, really close to home, and they came up with some kind of, hey, makes sense for us, makes sense for you.
I don't know.
The point
maybe
being,
you can ask Francisca.
I can ask Francisca. Yeah, my first ever boss.
So she's now what she
director of SLATE, I think.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah. But
yeah.
Yeah, no, because I guess it just the thought being that you can find customers anywhere, or partnerships anywhere. So maybe your co-working operator is interested in your translation technology / services.
Absolutely. Yeah. Look where you are, what space you're in, and maybe you'll find some win-win situations. Just be mindful of setting up those kind of referral contracts or lead, I don't know, premium contracts, etc. So and yeah, I mean, a lot of them don't work eventually. They sound great in theory, and don't really work in reality. That doesn't mean you shouldn't try them. I mean, maybe you're going to hit a home run with a couple of them. Cool. So we need to move on to SlatorCon Remote now, and hopefully everything goes well. I'm sure it will, and by the time this airs, it will have happened. So thanks so much, and see you next week.
Thanks. Bye.
Cool. Bye.